So,
Are we there yet?
We're here. It's the 1st of January 2023, and today I'm going to interview this wonderful man here, my father. Just ask a few questions about his life and just have a few memories and things like that, just so that all the family from now and into the future know who this wonderful person is. So, Dad, do you want to just state your full name?
Full name and address and everything else.
No,
John Adrian Colman, called John after my father, and Adrian because my father admired the Emperor Hadrian from way back. And there you go. I guess on a sort of prophetic sort of view, it also means lover of the sea, which is quite appropriate. I love the sea.
Oh, okay, cool. And so, when's your date of birth, and where were you born?
Date of birth 18th of February 1942, in the middle of the Second World War, in the workhouse at Farnham, which is a wee town in Surrey in the south of England, which had been turned into a hospital for the duration of the war. And then after that, my parents were visiting my father's parents in Farnham, or it might have been just my grandmother by then, because I think I never knew either of my grandfathers. I think they were both dead before I was born. Anyway, that's where I was born, south of England, Surrey, southwest of London somewhere.
Oh, cool. And what is your first memory?
Oh, shoosh.
What would that be? What is this? How far back could you remember, like as a child or even earlier?
I can think of one or two memories, which probably still during the war. That'd be three and a half when the war ended, I suppose. So there's some memories from there. I remember being on a. We had no car during the war. Well, if we did have one, there was no petrol to run it with anyway. So we got around on bicycles. I remember being on my father's bike. There was he had a little saddle on the crossbar, so I was sitting in front there. I could see everything. I thought this was a much better setup than what my mother carried my sister Hermia around. But she was on a more sort of basket on the back sort of thing. You know the sort of rules. Okay. Anyway, that's an early memory. And I do remember coming back from a holiday somewhere to the house at Newport Pagnell where we'd moved to, which is in Bedfordshire, a bit further north. And coming back and seeing some guy cutting the lawn with a scythe. Because we'd been on holiday, no one had cut the grass, and before we left probably. It was a rented place. I guess this was probably the landlord cutting the grass, but the scythe was interesting.
And how old would you have been then, do you think?
Oh, must have been 2 or 3. 2
or 3? Wow, okay, cool.
So that's a early memory. And there was some from... my sister and I were sent to a little nursery school somewhere near, I don't know exactly where it was, somewhere in Woburn Sands, I suppose, which is where we were. But there were about 9 or 10 kids there, and they were all sort of 2 to 4 age sort of thing. It was a nice little school. But everybody did something
cute,
wicked. Well, not wicked, but naughty.
Yeah. Somebody
bounced on the sofa and broke the springs, and somebody else broke the gramophone, and somebody else broke something else. I let the rabbit out.
Did they find the rabbit?
Oh, it just hopped away. It was a very tame rabbit. And then they got it back and put it back in his hut.
Cute. Love it. Oh, that's good. So, what comes to mind when you think about growing up in England?
We had the main memories of being in England were probably in Sheffield, where we were for 4 years just after the war. Before that, we were in the countryside of Bedfordshire, largely because Dad had a job at Bletchley Park during the war, so we had to live somewhere near there, and he was always catching the train to Bletchley. So we were in the country at that time, though Woburn Sands is now part of the quite large settlement of what's it called, Milton Keynes.
Okay.
So which is a town of 100,000 now, I think, or thereabouts. But at those days it was all countryside. But we lived in Sheffield for 4 years after the war. Dad had a job as a lecturer in zoology at the university. And we were in a house in a street called Salter Lane, number 30-something. It was a three-story house. Well, there was a cellar as well where coal and stuff went. And then there's most of the living floors on the ground floor, and then the bedrooms on the second floor, and there's some attics way up the top. So that was our house. There was a bit of a back garden.
And did you have your own room?
Yeah. Yeah, well, must have had about, well, obviously at least 3 bedrooms, maybe another one. I can't. As I say, there's an attic, which is probably where servants would have gone if there'd been any.
Okay.
Or something. Anyway, it was full of junk by the time we got there.
Right. Okay.
As as it is.
So what did you love to do as a kid before college?
Before college, that means...
Well before college,
well
as a child.
Oh.
You know, hobbies or...
We used to ride our bikes around a lot when we were 6 or 7 or so. It was much easier then than it is now, because there were very few cars around after the war, hardly any. If you started collecting phone numbers, not phone numbers, car numbers, you might collect 20 during the day.
Wow.
That was it.
Yeah.
So we used to ride around quite a lot on our bikes. There was a young guy down the road, Graham. We used to go around as a threesome pretty much. And what else did we do? Oh, this and that, I can't really remember now. Oh, Dad built a couple of little model sailing boats for us to take to the pond. There was one I can't remember which part of Sheffield it was. We had to take a bus there.
Okay.
We used to take these boats and sail them on the pond.
So he made the boats?
Yeah, out of a kit set
right,
things. Yeah, they're made of balsa wood.
Awesome.
But they were about that long, 30 to 40, 50 centimetres long. They were quite big, and they're self-steering and stuff. And they were quite cool.
Fun. Oh, fun. And did you do lots of reading when you were a child?
Oh, quite a lot, yeah. I can't remember what exactly now, but yeah, we were both good readers.
Lots of books in the family.
Yeah, we always had books. Always books around.
And what kind of games did you like to play? Apart from maybe, taking the boats out and...
Well, at school, probably marbles was the main pastime during the playtime. There was some manhole covers with holes in it where you put your hand in and to pull it up, and little what do you call them? Some little sort of studs on the thing.
Yeah.
And the ploy was to get your marble in from the top and into one of these holes, and it used to bounce around off all these little things. And anyway, we played marbles in the playground.
Fun.
And football too, with some scungy old tennis ball and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It was this was the school. We had to catch a tram to get there. It was a little way off, but the nearest school was one called Hunter's Bar, which had a pretty tough reputation. So my parents thought it'd be better to go to this one at a place called Nether Green, which was must have been seemed quite a fair-sized journey to it. Probably about 3 or 4 kilometres away. But we walked down to catch the tram, and that tram took us straight up to school. Then you get a tram on the way back, get off at the right stop, and go home.
And did you have to wear a uniform there, or just normal?
No uniforms.
Clothes? No uniforms.
No. This was it had been hard just after the war. I think that you just wore what you'd got, really.
Yes.
And quite a lot of the kids there weren't that well off. So yeah. But it was. I remember quite a good school. It was divided into 2, if you like. There was one playground for the little kids. I can't remember what age you went up to, and the other one was for the bigger boys, particularly.
Yeah, probably a junior and a senior playground or something like that.
All asphalted.
Right.
No grass.
Oh wow, it would have been hot in the summer then.
It probably was. I don't remember that.
Yeah. And did you collect any? Did you have any collections?
Started to collect stamps. And some quite older ones, I guess. I don't know what happened to the collection. It probably got lost in translation or transmission somewhere. But I collected stamps, and there were some quite interesting old pictures of this and that on them. Not just a walking head, There were some good stamps. But nowadays you wouldn't be able to keep pace with them because they change every, I don't know how long.
So did you collect stamps from just sort of England or from all over?
No, wherever.
Wherever they came from. Yeah.
And there seemed to be quite a bit. Had quite a bunch of foreign ones, overseas ones, whatever you like to call them. And I don't know where they'd come from. Some of them look quite old. Still stamps with George V's head on them and things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have a pet growing up?
No, not until we went to Sheffield. Then we had a cat.
Right.
Just the one cat, I think, and that was about it. And when we moved to the Isle of Man, the lady who helped with the housework took it away. But no, that's just a cat then. Then we had 2 cats in the Isle of Man, but we never had a dog or anything. Cats was about it.
Right.
And I bought a couple of white mice off my cousin Andrew when we went to visit them once. He was wanting to get rid of them.
How did the cat and the mice get on?
Well, the mice were in a hutch and a little box really.
Yeah.
There's no problem.
All good. Oh.
I didn't have them for very long. They don't live very long, you know.
Mice,
I had them a couple of years or so. Well, one of them less than that.
Do you remember what you named them?
Crumbs. No, not really.
I
I remember feeding them on dandelion leaves.
So how long were you in Sheffield for before you moved to the Isle of Man?
About 4 years. We moved there in must have been just after the war, 1946 or thereabouts.
Right.
And we went to the Isle of Man in 1950.
Right, so you would have been about 4, is that right?
When we got there, yeah, and
Yeah.
about 8 when we left.
Okay.
Yeah.
So who was your best childhood friend? Do you remember?
Well, when
special
we were in
friends?
Sheffield, I mentioned this guy Graham Johnson who just lived down the road on the other side, and him and I used to go around with him quite a bit.
Yeah.
There was some kids at school I got on with. I can't really remember their names particularly now, but they were scattered around Sheffield here and there.
Yeah. So this is a completely, slightly different question. Who would be your oldest living friend, do you think?
If they're still alive, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I've rather lost track of people in the UK now.
Yeah.
So
It'd be probably
hard to say.
someone in New Zealand maybe then.
probably now, yeah. Yeah. Don't know. We're never that close. Oh, but quite close with some of my cousins, but we didn't see them very often.
Right.
Because they were in the UK and we were in the Isle of Manx, so we didn't get to see them all the time. But when we got to see them, everything was fine. No problem.
Yeah. Did you have any family traditions growing up?
Traditions,
Like maybe holidays, like places that you went, or
well,
certain things that you remember doing every
while we
year?
were living in Sheffield, we used to go to North Wales for summer holidays quite a lot. We didn't have a car, so you went on the train, and the service to North Wales was pretty good from Sheffield. So we did go over there, played usually in or around a place called Abergele, which is on the north coast of Wales, near a town called Rhyl, which is a bit bigger. And on the way out to Carnarvon, out on that coast.
Mm.
So that was something we used to do every year.
Was it in the summertime?
Yeah.
And how many weeks would you spend there?
Probably 2. I can't remember exactly.
So you went there with your mum and dad and your sister?
Mm-hmm.
And did you meet any friends there, or were the same families that met every year there? Or?
Well, we met some cousins there sometimes. There was a bunch of second cousins who had also had relatives over there. A guy called, he'd been a mate of Lloyd George and had been given a barony. And he had this house in, what's it called? I can't remember, near where we went on holiday. We used to go and visit them now and again. The reason being that my father's mother was a sister to this guy, and she was living with him at the time. So when we went to North Wales, we went to go and visit my grandma.
Oh, cool, nice. So your grandma was living in Wales?
Well, she was living with her brother, who was this Lord Clwyd.
Okay.
And this Brinkwennald house, which is quite a big house inland, a little bit from where we were at Abergele. You can look it up on the map if you like to see where it was. Yeah.
Absolutely. Awesome. Okay. So did you do the similar things like for birthdays and things? Did your mother like make you a cake, or like did you do anything special for special occasions that you can remember?
Can't remember a lot, not when we were in Sheffield anyway. We never made a big fuss about anniversaries, things like that. Birthdays, yeah, you remembered those, but
can you remember your first Christmas? One of the
first Christmas.
Well,
gosh,
not your first
not
Christmas,
really.
obviously, but like
No, I can't remember Christmases much.
No. I guess it would have been obviously completely opposite to our New Zealand Christmases. It would have been like colder.
Well, I do remember in Sheffield we had the same Christmas tree year after year. It was in a bucket.
Okay.
And they planted it out in the garden
Yeah.
during the year, and it didn't really grow very much because it was in a bucket. And but every year you bring it in and dress it up and stuff.
Oh, the same tree?
The same one, yeah.
Oh.
As I say, it didn't grow very much because it's fast.
But it was still
almost
alright.
a sort of bonsai tree, really, yeah. Oh, it survived.
The bonsai
It
Christmas
survived,
tree,
yeah, it
wow.
survived.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So what was your house like as a child? I suppose you lived in a few different places, but...
Well, we did it in the...
You've explained the one in Sheffield.
The first one I remember was the one at Newport Pagnell, which was what we were in during the war, and Dad was at Bletchley Park. That was... I've got some pictures of it somewhere, but it was a sort of two-story living room, ground floor, but bedrooms up there. I don't know how many bedrooms there were, probably 3. And it was just on a quiet little lane then. It was quite a cool little lane. You came off the main road into there, and then there's another lane going down there. Went to a gate at the end where there was a paddock beyond it. So it was quite countrified. So that was the first house we had. The Sheffield one was it was a semi, but I think I tried to describe it earlier. It had the coal cellar at the bottom. Yes. Most of the living area on the ground floor, bedrooms on the second floor. Well, we'd call it the first floor, wouldn't we? And then there's some attics at the top.
Right.
So that was that. And then when we went to the Isle of Man, my parents built a house there. Took quite a while. And that was, a 2-story house with nice view. Looked out over the Port Erin Bay.
And how long did you live in that house for? Was that the house that you lived in the longest?
Yeah, it was 16 years there we were.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, 15. We were in another house for about a year while they were building that one.
Right.
And that was a little one called, well, it wasn't so little, actually, it's quite a big house, called Rowaney Cottage, which was down in the village of Port Erin.
So what was your cottage called?
I think he called it Whindike, which means Whin is gorse, and Dyke, I suppose, is a fence or something. But anyway, there it was. There were gorse bushes around.
So were all the cottages named different names?
A lot of them were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. That's nice. So what would a typical day have been like in your childhood? Say in the Isle of Man, because that was the place you spent a lot of time.
Get up, go to school, come back. I was at school at King William's College, which was in Castletown, about 5 miles away, 8 or 10 kilometres away. It was a semi-day boy, mostly boarding school. But I was sent there. There was a sort of state school nearby, but I think my parents thought I'd get a better education at this one. Anyway, that involved about a half an hour bus ride to get there, which was a bit of a problem for me. I was quite badly car sick in those days. By the time I got to school,
how awful!
You couldn't. It was pretty uncomfortable, and the same on the way home. So I didn't enjoy the bus rides very much, but the school was okay. I was the youngest boy in the school when I went there, but I did all right.
Oh, good.
Actually, they put me up a form after a little while, but because I was the youngest, I was.
So how old were you?
I'd have been 8 then.
8. Right.
All the next form up, our kids were all quite a bit older. Who were all these big guys, sort of thing. So socially it didn't work out. So they put me back with my own kind after that.
Yeah.
I was there for 3 years, but the last year was largely not there, if you know what I mean, because I'd been ill, and I only managed little bits at the beginning of the term before I crashed.
What kind of illness? Was it glandular fever or something like that?
I don't know what they called it, Q fever, but I think there's another name for another disease called Q fever now. They thought it was probably some infection by milk, which we got, I think it was unpasteurized, from the local farm down the road. It used to come round in a churn, and you'd dip your jug into it basically to get they poured it into a jug, you went out with it.
Yeah. That
sort of milk. So it might have been. But anyway, the symptoms were I got tired very easily. Very hard, no stamina,
Yeah.
It was a kind of vague sort of thing, but it started off the year, I lasted a few days, and
Just really tired, yeah.
And I was taken to see a child specialist in Sheffield, which my parents obviously knew Sheffield because we'd only just moved from there. And this dude called Dr. Illingworth had a look, and he wasn't sure, something here, but I'm not quite sure what. And I was plonked into a hospital for a couple of weeks so they could take samples and check things out and whatnot. And then, then we went home again so that was for the first term of the year, which runs in the UK from September through to Christmas. Then after Christmas, and I was sent back to school to see how it went. The same again. After a couple, 2 or 3 days, couldn't take it. And again, rest for the rest of the term. And then in the summer, I actually lasted about 10 days before I crashed.
Right.
And they said, forget it, just let him roam. So I was pretty much on my own for that year. Though I was allowed to get out and around and stuff,
but no schooling, no intense.
Gradually build up strength. No.
Right.
Partly, I think it was exacerbated by the bus ride to school and back. As I mentioned, I was not a good traveller, and by the time I got up to the school, I was feeling terribly ill, and by the time I got back, I wasn't feeling that flash either. So I gradually grew out of it, but at that time it was quite a problem.
Yeah.
Anyway, after that, my parents said, well, not much point in going back there if it's going to be like that. So I was sent to a school overseas. Over the sea? Across, that's what they used to call it.
Oh, okay.
In England.
And so where did they send you over to?
It was a little prep school, a preparatory school, I should say. It prepared kids to go to a public school, which are private schools.
Yeah, so public equals private, right?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Fee-paying schools.
Yes.
So anyway, I went to this prep school. It was just on the edge of the Lake District in Cumberland. It was a nice spot, nice little school. About 50 kids there, from 7 or so up to 13.
Wow.
Some of them, they're a boarding school, and here these little kids, I don't think there were any 6-year-olds, but 7s.
Wow, that's so young.
Yeah, and they didn't seem to have any troubles. Well, they probably had a few weepy moments being homesick.
How did you get on with going there and leaving your family?
Mum and homesick for a few days. But no, it was all right. It was fairly comfortable, really. Yeah. It was in it must have been somebody's country house in the old days. It had, I don't know how old days. It had quite a big sort of garden area around it, and a sort of paddock out one side, which was playing fields and stuff. It was quite. There was another paddock too where they grew stuff, and I remember picking up potatoes from this paddock. They had a horse which ploughed it up, and all the spuds were there to be picked up. So we did all that. There must have been a couple of tons of them at least. They went into a big barn building, which I think used to have been the stables when it was a living house.
Cool.
And there was they had a quite nice little workshop there too. They had lessons on there. You could make things. I remember making a boot jack in there. Just a sort of wedge with a thing there, and a big, put your heel in, and pull off your boots.
Oh, I see.
Quite cool. And there was a lathe that you could use with supervision. Yeah, it was quite well equipped. It was fun.
So how long were you there for?
I was only there for 5 terms.
Right.
Which was the whole of that next year, and then 2 terms after that, and then I went to Shrewsbury School, which is a fee-paying public school. Right.
And did any of the other kids who were at that school go to Shrewsbury School too?
Not from there. They mostly went to probably either to St Bees, which is about just a few miles north of there. So a lot of kids who were mainly from that area went to St Bees, or Sedbergh, which is in North Yorkshire, which again not that far away. Well, those would be the 2 main schools that they went to. Okay. So I remember one guy, he went to the school at St Armand's, which is way up in Scotland. I don't know where his parents lived. So, but people went all over.
It was quite normal for kids your age to go to a boarding school, and they just bought whatever education their parents wanted for them, I suppose.
Well, if you got the money to pay for it, I guess. It must have been, maybe my parents had inherited some dough, which comes in handy when you're raising children.
Yes. Yes.
But anyway, that was where I moved after Haycroft Hall, which was the name of the preparatory school. We went to Shrewsbury, which is on the Welsh border in England. Well, you know where Shrewsbury is, probably, on the River Severn.
And you were at Shrewsbury School for how long?
5 years.
5 years.
And
then,
1 term.
So by the time you finished at Shrewsbury School, how old were you?
18.
18. Oh, okay. And then after, so that was the, right, so then
That's
you
the
were ready
schooling,
to go
yeah.
to college, or, well, that was college
University
and
then,
university.
you call it there.
So, so you went to that college. What was the university that you attended?
I went to
after
Oxford.
that?
I went to Oxford, New College, which was my father's college, and
So straight after
Was it-
Shrewsbury College, you went to
Yep.
Oxford?
Yep. Originally, my idea was to study medicine, and but I did 1 term on that. I didn't really enjoy it. I started feeling jealous of the guys doing zoology, and I'd better. So I came home at the end of the first term and moped around a bit. And my parents got quite worried. They thought I'd got into some real trouble, or got somebody else into some real trouble. And
Right.
so eventually they said, "Well, what's the problem?" And I said, "Well, I don't really think I'm cut out for medicine. I'd suit to go back to doing zoology." So it was after a bit of
Changing.
working around things, and they rearranged that, and I went back and did zoology for the rest of the time there, which I enjoyed.
What were some other subjects that you did there that you enjoyed?
What other subjects?
It was just
all part and parcel
all part
of
of
zoology.
zoology,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, it's in different parts of sort of what they called the core of the whole thing was what they call comparative anatomy, which basically went through the animal kingdom, and you looked at all the different bits and pieces of it, from protozoa up to vertebrates.
Right.
Just so you knew what was what. But there was a lot of other things like animal behaviour and ecology and I don't know what all else, physiology. Yeah, like a lot of stuff which is all part and parcel of the zoology
So your
course.
major was zoology, and
Yep.
you said that you went to other universities.
No. Oh, the only other
New
one
College?
was Liverpool. No, that's New College is part of Oxford University.
Oh, okay.
The college system, it's largely, the colleges are largely just accommodation, and they also provide tutors and things.
Right.
There's a lot of what they call fellows attached to these places, and they're there to teach and do research and whatever.
Right. Okay. All right. Cool. So while you were at uni, what did you play any sports or musical instruments or any clubs? Did you join any clubs or anything like that you enjoyed?
I quite a lot of sport. I played soccer in the winter, cricket in the summer. What else did I do? That was about all really. Those are the main ones. Didn't have much time for anything else. And yeah, what have I got here? There's my glasses.
And you
No, it's this thing.
you were living on campus, obviously.
Yeah. Well, the college is a residential too.
Yes, right.
And usually for the first year you'd be in one, and after that there's not enough room because another lot coming in here. Go and find some accommodation in the town.
So did you go flatting or?
Yeah, I had 2 years in college accommodation in a little annex. It wasn't in the main building of the college. It was in a little annex, which was quite nice. It was easy to climb in and out of after hours if you wanted to, so that was cool.
Good. Yeah.
In most of the colleges had they didn't like people climbing in and out, and they had these spikes on top of the walls, and some of them sort of revolving things. So you grab hold of the spike, there's nothing to get a grip of.
Wow.
So people found their way around them. Don't worry. I never heard of anybody getting spiked, but they were all there to make it more difficult for you.
Yeah.
But ours just had a sort of metal gate, which no trouble at all.
Perfect.
So that was cool. So I had 2 years in that annex, and then I went out I had to find some accommodation. I went out with a friend from the zoology course that I was on, and we went into a little common. He'd been in it before, and he recommended the breakfast that this lady cooked for her students that she catered for. Well, they were very good. And I was in there with him. We shared a room, but there was another student in there as well, so that was 3 of us in there. And it was about a 10-minute bike ride back down to the university, which was okay on most times, but when it got really cold, foggy and horrible, it was kind of cold.
Yeah, yeah. So, just wanted to talk a little bit about your parents. What are your parents' names?
John Stacey Colman. Stacey was a family name from way back. One of the ladies who married a Colman was Lucy Maria Stacey, and this became a bit of a family name. There are other Staceys in the family too. The second name. My mother was just Bertha Thompson, and she was the eldest of 4 kids. She had 3 brothers, of whom Arthur became a bank manager, Ronnie was killed in the war, and Alan was fairly high up in the education department in London. And my father had a brother, Tom, who was an Anglican priest, vicar, whatever you like to call it. And he moved around. When I first knew him, he had a parish up in Cumberland near Cockermouth, and we went up there to see them. It was fairly rural. Everything was very muddy all around the place. I remember we had to sort of find some boots to fit us, big lace-up boots, and to get around. It was quite fun. And there was a little stream nearby. But after that, he was more in the South Midlands. He had parishes down there in Bedfordshire and places like that. He was in Aylesbury for quite a while. Yeah.
So where, what are the birth dates of your parents, and where were they born?
Well, my father was born in London, I think. I'm not sure exactly where. What was the whole question?
What were their birth dates?
Well,
do you remember their dates?
Born, yeah, September the 8th, 1906. And my mother was August the 28th, 1907.
Cool. Okay. And so, what jobs did they do?
Well, Mum was she had quite a long education. She went to, which she had to fight for, because in those days girls were regarded as, they don't really need educating too much.
Right.
But anyway, she managed to argue her way into university at Leeds, where she met a very good friend, Hilda, who was our sort of godmother, if you like, honorary aunt. Anyway, she was at Leeds for 3 years, and then she had a fellowship to go to the United States. I can't remember if that was before or after she did a doctorate in English, which was her subject.
Right.
And she also had this fellowship to go to the United States, where she made some good friends as well. And I think she enjoyed that time more than any other time in her life. She met my father over there, and they got married after they both he was on a fellowship as well.
So what was his fellowship?
It was called a Harkness Fellowship. I don't know what they call them these days. Something else. Sort of
So is that like a scholarship?
Like a Rhodes Scholarship,
right.
that sort of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And his subject was?
Marine zoology.
Marine zoology. So similar to what you decided to study too. Okay, cool. So they met. Sorry, where did they meet again?
They met in the United States.
Oh, okay.
And they didn't get married until they were back in the UK.
Oh wow! So how long were they together for before they got married?
I'm not actually sure.
Yeah.
I don't even know what their wedding anniversary was, but be sometime in the late 30s.
Right.
And along came the war, and they had their 2 children, my sister and myself, during the war.
Right. Yeah. And what did your dad do during the war?
Oh, he was at Bletchley Park, which was an intelligence outfit. Decoding they did a lot of,
right.
Finding stuff that the Germans were doing. But before the war, he more or less took what they could get. This was during the Depression in the 1930s, and jobs were hard to get. He had a lot of sort of short-term jobs, and some of them quite cool. He had one on a yacht by this guy Lord Moyne. He's part of the Guinness family. And he had a yacht which went right round. Anyway, he took a trip sort of round the North Atlantic somewhere, and Dad went there as Thames zoologist to look at all the bits and pieces, which he enjoyed that. So he had 1 or 2 jobs a bit like that. And what happened after all that? Oh, he also had a couple of years in Newfoundland at the newly set up university there. And Mum they were married by then. Mum came with him. I think she stood one winter and went home.
Yeah.
Because I think the winters must have been more severe then than they are now. There's sort of talks of snow drifts up to the eaves, and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Not things that make life easy. But he stayed out there for another year, I think. But before that, just after he'd finished university, he went on this expedition out to Australia to the Barrier Reef. He was there for about 18 months, I think, while they were studying the reef. And that was when he was just straight from university.
And there would have been a lot more coral on the reef back then, I'm sure.
Oh, probably, yeah.
A lot more colour.
He didn't really enjoy Australia that much. He said it's the only place he's been hated for being an Englishman.
Oh.
I think
When they're not polite to him.
Well, they call it polyman.
Oh, okay.
They used to. I think they were a bit more. I think it was probably ruder then than they are now, because especially to English people, they weren't very pleased with those. So anyway.
So what do you remember most about your mum and dad then, as a couple, or when you were growing up? Like, what do you remember about them? Did they do things together? Like.
We did. We went on holidays as family for quite a while. Then I think eventually it sort of split into two. Mum took Hermia somewhere, and I went off on sort of watching cricket holiday with Dad. Somewhere based in London, going to the Oval or Lords, or maybe some of the cricket grounds and within easy reach.
So he was cricket mad, your dad?
He was keen on cricket, yeah.
Right.
He wasn't that good. He was okay, but he wasn't that good.
Yeah.
But he enjoyed it. And because I was born in Surrey, I supported Surrey in those days, and they kept winning everything in those days. They don't anymore.
Right. Okay. What do you think was most important to each of them? What do you think they?
Well, I think Dad
valued.
Dad's work was important to him, and his family too. That was important, very important. Mum was a teacher, and that was important to her. And she went, while we were in the island, she went and taught at the girls' school in Castletown, about 5 miles away. And she enjoyed teaching the girls there. Used to call them my girls sometimes.
Yeah.
Some of them are from overseas. I remember talking to her Zanzibaris. There were about 4 girls from Zanzibar there. It was before Tanzania took over. And she enjoyed teaching these people from different backgrounds. But I think she found the island a bit stultifying. She'd have been happier on the mainland, looking back on it, where she could have hopped in a car and go and see her brothers and their families and things. Yeah. Whereas when you're on an island, you have to make arrangements to get off it, either book a plane or go on a boat somewhere. I mean, the boat trip was about 3 3/4 hours to Liverpool, and then where were you but Liverpool? You've got to catch a train or something, unless you brought a car with you. So I think she found that a bit of a hard to handle. Yeah. I think Dad was much happier. In some ways we're a bit that way. Well, I'm quite happy up here. Mum's also happy, but not as happy as me. So did your dad, did he become a lecturer, would you say? His position by that, he was, when we were at Sheffield, he was a lecturer in zoology at the university there. And then he applied for this job as director of this biological station at Port Erin, which was part of the University of Liverpool. Right. It was the Department of Marine Biology, basically. Right. And that's what it was. So most of them were zoologists, or 1 or 2 botanists as well. Which was quite handy because you already were living there, so. Well, no, we moved there because he got the job. Oh, I see. Right. Yeah. And so we stayed there. They built this house, and Dad ran the biological station. Nice. Which was. So, if this is an interesting question, but if your parents had a message for you and their grandchildren, oh boy, what do you think it would be? What would they say to you now? I suppose basically, I think it would be sort of make your own decisions. Don't let the world run you. But I don't think they ever said that. But you worked it out. I think they encouraged us to think independently, if you like. Yeah, I'm not quite sure.
Oh, that's
Something
good.
like
That's
that.
great. Do you remember your grandparents at all?
I remember my grandmothers, but I don't remember either of my grandfathers. I think they were both dead before I was born. My father's father was a doctor in London.
Like a medical doctor?
Yeah, and my grandmother on the father's side, my father's mother was also a doctor on the medical side, but I don't think she practiced much after they were married. On the other side, my mother's mother was a teacher, a primary teacher, and she married a business guy. Not sure what he was into. I think it was in the sort of. Anyway, he was a business person, and I can't remember exactly what it was. But once she was married to him, they didn't employ married teachers in those days.
Females.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was up in Carlisle,
Right.
which is where they came from.
Right. So did your so did your dad? He grew up there then?
He grew
up in Carlisle.
No, he grew up in London,
Right.
where his father was a doctor in Wimpole Street.
Right, and
which
then
is
they
just
travelled up.
just around the corner from Harley Street, the same sort of area.
So did
doctors.
they travel up to Carlisle? That's in Scotland, yes. Is that right?
No,
I'm not quite sure.
My mum was in Carlisle, Dad was down in London. They met in the US of A on fellowships, so that's how they met, because they were quite separate places, as you point out. And from then on, they lived in the south of England. I can't remember where they lived first. I think again this was pretty tough times. It was in the Depression, and they had to you had to make do with what jobs you could get and maybe move to those.
Yeah.
So I had my obviously I have no recollections of this, but what information I can get from them about that time was, I don't think they were having a great time.
No, it was hard war years as well, wasn't it? Yeah. So, Dad, when did you come over to New Zealand?
Well, I can't remember what the last little bit we had was at university. I think there's 3 more years in the Isle of Man studying for a PhD.
Right.
In marine biology. That was at the Port Erin Laboratory of the University of Liverpool, run by my dad. He knew of a fellowship that was available and advised me to apply for it, and I got it. So there I was, set up for £300 a year, I think, something like that.
Yeah.
But I was living at home, obviously. Anyway, I was there for 3 years studying the sort of biology of juvenile plaice, which is a flatfish. And after that, that finished in 1966, middle of 1966, by the time I finished doing that. And I was applying for places to go and get a job after that, as you do. And I applied to a few places. I didn't want to go to a place in England particularly, though I did apply for 1 or 2 places there. One in Aberdeen, I think, and another one in Lowestoft, which is both with fisheries outfits. Well, the Scottish fisheries people in Aberdeen, obviously, and the British one, the English one in Lowestoft. But anyway, didn't get those. I was also applying overseas. I think I applied for a place in Canada, one in Australia, I think, and New Zealand.
Right.
And I was summoned to an interview in London for the New Zealand one. And I was interviewed by a guy from, I think he was a bit of the staff on the High Commission there, and he didn't know too much about it.
What, the job or New Zealand?
Well, no, he knew a bit about New Zealand, but anyway, it wasn't a sort of full-on interview. The guy I had what you might call the final interview with was a bloke called Jim Brodie, who was he was running the New Zealand Oceanographic Institute at the time, but he was also acting director of fisheries fisheries at the same time. They were in the process of appointing someone as a more permanent director. That was not my job. I was just a fresh out of university graduate, or as Barry Crump might put it, a good keen man.
A good keen man,
Yeah.
ready to learn.
Yeah.
Yep.
So anyway, they offered me a job. This was about sometime in June or July, I think, in 1966. And I didn't hear an awful lot more for quite a long time. And eventually I sort of said, oh, what's going on down there, anything at all? And about the next thing I heard was, well, you're booked on the Rangitani in 3 weeks' time. You better be there, sort of thing.
Wow.
So it was pretty quick once things happened. And that was in December 1967. I left from London. What's the place called? Anyway, the Port of London.
Yes.
On the good ship Rangitani, which was it was run by the New Zealand Shipping Company, and it had about 400 passengers on it, but it was about a 17, 18, 20,000 ton ship. It was quite big. Most of it was cargo, but they did carry 400 passengers or so. So I was hopped on. I was put on this thing, and
And how long did it take to get to New Zealand?
it was about 5 weeks.
Wow.
Well, 16 knots was what she did most of the time, which is not that fast, but it gets you there in the end. About 400 miles a day.
And did you stop off at different places on the way?
Not many. When we left Tilbury, that's the name of the docks, you have to go round out of the Thames and down the Channel and out into the Bay of Biscay. I think that took about a couple of days. And then on across the Atlantic, the first stop was Curacao, which is a Dutch colony on the north coast of South America. We got there on Christmas Day. Everything was shut.
Yeah.
We had the morning ashore.
So you're saying we? Who's we?
The boat.
Oh, so did you have any travelling companions?
Well, they carried about 400.
Yeah.
I got pretty particularly friendly with a married couple. She was pregnant, and he was on his way to take a job as a manager of a Mackenzie's store. Do you remember Mackenzie's?
Yes.
Yeah, in Auckland. So he was on his way to do that. And as I say, she was pregnant. She felt seasick the whole trip, which was a shame. But never mind, she coped. And there was a young guy from Auckland. What the heck was his name? Anyway, he seemed to be from a fairly well-off family. Kept talking about boats in the Bay of Islands and stuff.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
which he seemed to be very familiar with.
Nice.
So anyway, there was him as well, and there were quite a lot of other people on board. There was a bunch of New Zealand girls coming back from an overseas trip, and things like that.
And was that the first time you'd heard the New Zealand accent?
No, we'd had one or two New Zealanders at the Port Erin Biological Station, so I wasn't totally unfamiliar with it.
Right. So did you come directly on the boat to Wellington, or did you land in Auckland first?
No, we went to Wellington. We stopped at Curacao for the morning. I think they refueled there because they do that sort of thing there. There's plenty of oil in Venezuela, which is right next door. The next stop was Panama. Had an evening ashore there. Going through the canal was fun.
Yeah.
That was cool. And we passed one or two ships in the big lake that they got there, Gatun Lake, coming the other way. But yeah, going down the canal was cool. They put a great. You could eat up on deck and watch the landscape go by. It was good fun.
Nice.
Anyway, then they got into Panama about late in the afternoon. We had the evening ashore there.
And then where did you go after Panama?
And then off to sea through Tahiti was the next stop, and that was the only other stop before we got to Wellington.
Right.
But it was just cruising.
Yeah.
And
you didn't get seasick or anything? You were all right?
It was flat calm the whole way.
Wow.
We never had any storms or anything.
You're so fortunate.
Yeah, it was so cool. I was particularly sorry for what's that? Wrap it up?
No.
Go on.
Carry on.
Okay.
So
this was it's a 5-week holiday basically.
Right.
Fantastic.
So when you got to Wellington, where did you live?
Well, they plonked us into the newer, I guess it was the Marine Department, it was in those days. I was booked into this hotel in, it's off Bolton Street, I think. What was it called? Anyway, I can't remember the name of it now. But it was a Sayes Court Hotel. It seemed to be a receptacle for quite a few people that's arriving.
Right.
So I was in there for
a little
week
while.
or 10 days. Well, I think I was booked in for a fortnight originally. But it gives you time to find somewhere to actually to live,
And you ended up flatting in Oriental Bay?
Flatting in Oriental Bay at Grass Street. That was through the good offices of John Cranfield, who we've Have you met John Cran?
Yes.
Yes, you've met
Yes.
Cran. Yeah, when he had just got married and moved out from this flat.
Right.
And he knew they were looking for somebody to fill in. And he said, would you be interested? So I went round and had this interview with Tom Robbins, who was one of the two guys left in the flat. And I think the first question he asked was, can you cook?
Oh,
And I
good.
said, yeah, sort of.
Yes.
But Tom actually was a very good cook, and he had a spice collection as long as your arm.
Yeah.
But I don't go for that sort of thing, at least I certainly didn't then. Anyway, I went to this flat in Oriental Bay, fine, good. And okay, accepted into their society, if you like.
Yes.
But then, so I got all my stuff, such as I had, to get it in there. But then I mentioned before that Jim Brodie, who was acting director of the fisheries place, he talked Duncan Waugh, who was there he was there to study the New Zealand rock oysters.
Right.
And Brodie persuaded Duncan to take on the vacancy of the fisheries director of fisheries research. And so Duncan did that, but he had this program of research going on up in the Bay of Islands, of studying the rock oysters up there, and they needed somebody to look after that while he was coming down in Wellington to take over.
So they asked you?
Yes. So my introduction to working life in New Zealand was 6 weeks up in the Bay of Islands. It was very cool.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Good. So when you got your first job, so was this your first job?
First, yeah, it was
First
really.
proper job?
Yeah.
Right.
Hadn't done very much up till then. I'd been a bit of a slacker as far as getting vacation jobs and things.
Okay, so no working in the local dairy or
Well,
anything
I was
like
at boarding school, which made it difficult to pick
Yes.
up jobs against the local guys who were there. See, Port Aaron, in fact, the Isle of Man as a whole, thrived on the tourist trade.
Right.
But it used to start in June or thereabouts, the TT week. Or
TT
thereabout
races.
early, yeah, and then grow through to September. So by the time I got out of school in July or thereabouts, a bit hard to find things, and I didn't really look that hard anyway.
So with your job, with the first job, how much money were you, what was your salary? Do you remember your salary?
Here, when I first got here,
yes.
Yep, it was £1,400 a year, which became $2,800 when they changed to
to the currency.
Yeah, they changed to decimal currency that year.
Okay.
So that's what it was. And however, I was very gratified to find there were such things as what do you call them, cost of living adjustments and whatnot every year.
Right.
So it kept sort of creeping up and up and up a bit,
And how long did you stay with that company?
Well, under different names, 30 years or more.
Yes.
It started out as a marine department, and we were in the fisheries research division of the marine department. Then that was swallowed up in the marine department, swallowed up in the Ministry of Transport, or most of it was, because a lot of their work was things like looking after ship surveys and lighthouses and whatnot. And the fisheries side was transferred into the Ministry of Agriculture, which became the Department of Agriculture it was then, which became the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries,
right.
which was us.
Right, okay.
So that was that lot. And then later on, that was when they started having Crown Research Institutes. We became part of NIWA, which is the National Institute of Water and Atmospheric Research.
And that's when you left at the end of NIWA's reign, basically?
Well, NIWA,
or while you were still there?
Well, NIWA was well established by then.
Yeah.
And I left when did I leave? I don't know, towards the end of the century anyway.
Okay, so when you left that job, which you obviously enjoyed and were really good at, what did you do, after that was obviously your main job of your career. Yep. What are some other little jobs that you continued with after that, just for interest's sake and obviously finances?
Yeah, well, what did I do? Well, the job itself was not just the same job for 30 years.
No,
a lot of
there were different jobs
positions within, yeah. You start off as a sort of low-grade scientist, 103 scientist or whatever it was, and or 104, I forget. Anyway, a low-level one.
Yeah. And you worked your way up to.
Yeah, well, yeah. I was 108 by the time I left, which is it was quite good actually. They used to say what they call the career grade, which is about as far as a lot of people go, is 105, right. Grade 5 scientist. anything above that was,
Right.
good progression.
So when we were growing up, we remember you going off to sea on the scientific boat. What, 3 weeks at a time, maybe sometimes a bit more. Did you enjoy those times on the boat?
I like going to sea. Yeah, that changed a lot too. When I first came here in 1967, there's only one little research boat, which is about a 20-metre little boat up in Auckland. She wasn't really fit to go anywhere much except the Hauraki Gulf. She rolled like a cork, and but she was fun. The Ikatiri, her name was,
Right.
and she had a crew of 5 and carry a couple of scientific staff.
Yeah.
But as I say, she was mainly due to the Hauraki Gulf. She was replaced with a bigger boat, the Kaharoa, eventually.
And so and so Kaharoa, and there was the James Cook as well.
Oh, the James Cook came in. We still had I think we still had the Ikatiri up in Auckland then, but we had the James Cook as well. She was a 40-metre boat,
right.
Quite a bit bigger, an ex-trawler, which a company called New Zealand Sea Products had brought a couple of these things in to start, and they started a new company in Nelson.
Okay.
But they went bung, and one of the trawlers went back to Norway where it was built, and the government bought the other one as a research vessel, and that was the James Cook.
Right. Okay.
And we had her for quite a while until the Tangaroa came along in 1981 or thereabouts.
Right. So these were you were there in charge of these men who were basically doing a trawl of fish, and then basically tagging them and just doing a research on these fish, and then bringing all the data back.
I did a bit of tagging in the to start with the Ikatiri days, if you like, in the Hauraki Gulf, when we tagged some fish there and got the returns from them, see where they'd been and when. Quite interesting, actually. And then once I started going on the James Cook, because you can go further afield. I was still studying flounders at this time.
What other fish did you study?
Snapper to begin with, food, feeding, a bit of movement.
You did orange roughy, I remember, because we had some of that.
I didn't actually study orange roughy, but it was part of a deep water team, if you like. To go back a bit, in the 1970s, the whole world was starting to talk about 200-mile limits, where resource limits really, and New Zealand was no different. They said, "Oh well, we've got a lot of sea here. We're declaring this 200-mile not territorial sea, but it was a concept which put the sort of resources of about 200 miles in the hands of whatever government there was there. That's around the world." And New Zealand had a big area because not only is the mainland of New Zealand, there's the whole of the Kermadec Reach chain going north. There's the Chathams out to the east, and then you've got Campbell Island and Auckland Islands down to the south. So it was a big area, and we hadn't got much clue what was going on out there because virtually all the marine research had been done in the coastal areas. So then old Muldoon was in power then, and he said, I suppose these guys had better get out and do find out what we got there. So we had to start taking orders from politicians, which we hadn't had done before. We'd had a pretty free time, and looking back, that was how the heck did we manage to escape for so long?
So is that when a ministry was set up from the government?
The ministry, well, it's part of the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries. But we were more or less left alone to sort of decide what our priorities were. And because very little work had been done, you could choose almost anything. Said, "Has this been done?" "Oh no, good idea, mate. Get out and do it."
Right, cool.
And that was cool.
Okay.
It took me some time actually to find out we'd actually got an outfit called Head Office down in town. And we didn't even.
Right.
Duncan used to disappear down there as directors for directors' meetings and whatnot.
Yeah.
But so nothing to do with us, sort of thing. But yeah, we started to find out what words like accountability meant and things like that.
Right.
But it was so it was a bit of a change. But yeah, anyway, we got out into deeper water. Not orange roughy at that time. It was more in the sort of middle depths, what we called the middle depths anyway, sort of about 200 or 300 meters down to about 800.
Yeah, but what kind of fish were they?
Hoki, hake, ling, warrihow, and silver warrihow, white warrihow, all sorts of things. And a lot of, that sort of stuff.
When you were catching these, this is interesting, how many different like unexpected catches did you get? Like an unexpected fish or something in the catch?
Oh,
What was the most unexpected one you remember?
Yeah, we were really sort of finding new ones all the time because we hadn't been down in depths like that before. Hokey were everywhere. They're very common, and they still are, I hope. And hake and ling were probably the two other ones we particularly looked at because they're quite big fish. And
did you get any sharks or anything?
Oh yeah, you get a lot of dogfish and sharks and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Tangaroa was quite big, and she could catch quite big stuff. Though I think the biggest fish I ever saw was actually on the James Cook. We caught a basking shark.
Oh. And how big would that have been?
Oh, 8 or 9, 10 meters long, something like that.
Really?
Yeah, so they're a darn nuisance when you get them in the net. You've got to get them out of there.
Yes.
And there's someone got hoisted it up. A bit of a mess.
Amazing.
But anyway, the deeper water ones were different. We hadn't seen too many of those before. We kept getting a lot of what they call little rat-tailed fish, which have a big head and a narrow. There's a lot of those.
Yeah.
I don't know what they do down there, just feed on things.
All right, so moving on, we'll just, maybe we'll move on to like your job. So that was, you were there for a good 30 years, and so were you semi-retired when you kind of left there, or?
Well, I retired from there.
You retired from there and then moved on, and you did, what else?
Well,
you did Green, you did Mr. Green.
I had quite a few jobs within the sort of science progression, if you like. Started off something, then you become you can be a sort of section leader for a bit. You're looking after, but
So
a
section
group of
leader.
5 or 6 scientists and associated technical people and things. And I got as far as assistant director, where you're looking after, responsible for several sections.
Yeah.
And but by this time, we had a bit of a shake-up. Oh, it's when we joined NIWA, I guess. Yeah. And the way things were done became very different. It became more difficult to get money to do research.
Right.
Everything had to be approved beforehand. You spent a lot of time writing proposals and reports and blah, blah, blah.
So not as much time out doing the fun stuff.
I found it not as interesting. Though I still got to see now and again, which I like.
Yeah.
But after, I decided this isn't working for me.
Okay.
And got out and then started doing other things.
Yeah.
However, we weren't totally kicked down the. I did belong to the government superannuation scheme, which gave wasn't really quite enough to live on by itself, but it was.
Right. So what were the other jobs you did after that whole?
First one, I've been looking around for something to do for a bit. It didn't have to be a big money earner. So I did do, you mentioned Mr. Green. I went and mowed lawns for a year or two. And
got quite fit.
Oh yeah, I only lost about 3 belt holes.
Lots of water drunk.
Oh yeah, I used to take 3 litres. I haven't seen the shape of the little square sort of water bottles, fruit juice things. And I used to take 3 of those. And,
okay, and what, and after that job, what else did you plan to do after that?
I did a bit
of
sort of counselling work. What would you call it? Well, I went and trained a bit of part-time for counselling. I'd done a little bit of that kind of thing within NIWA. They had 3 of us at Greater Point were contact people for people who had a few problems and needed some help getting counselling or medical help anyway.
Right.
And I was one of those. And you get people coming with their little issues and wanting advice and stuff.
Yeah.
Usually it was fairly easy, but sometimes you'd get someone who got a real serious job and you could refer them on to a trained counsellor.
Okay.
They were sort of an intermediate sort of position, but it was interesting. And you got to eventually. I thought after I'd left NIWA, I thought I'd get some counselling training and see where that leads. So I did a couple of years of part-time counselling training. And
then was that the last job you did? That was
no. Then I joined an outfit called Workplace Support, and that was a bit like what I'd been doing in NIWA. You went out to different companies or government departments or whatever, anyway, people who employed people. And these people could have problems which they wanted to discuss with somebody.
Okay.
So they could discuss that with the workplace support person, and then maybe you can give them some advice, or perhaps they should talk to this, or or they could go and see another trained counsellor if it was too tough.
Okay.
There's all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Mainly off-job problems, so it could be marital, it could be they were worried about something, it could be a number of things.
Okay.
But not mainly to do with the job. If it was anything to do with that, you'd advise them to go and talk to their supervisor.
Yeah, right. Okay, cool. So I just want to quickly go back just briefly to your sister. What is your sister's name? You had one sister?
Elizabeth Hermia Colman it was then. It's Lambie now.
Right. And when was she born?
In September the 11th, 1940.
1940. And when you think of her, how would you describe her?
Bookish, to start with. She loved reading. It's a bit nervy.
Do you have any favourite memories that you've spent with her?
Not a lot, funnily enough, because as I say, she was very bookish. She loved reading, and often she'd be reading, I'd be out and about doing things.
Right. So she would be at home. She was a homebody, and you were out and about adventure guy.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So if you had a message for her, what would you like them to keep in mind?
As she is now?
Yeah.
Oh well.
Or whenever. Yeah.
I don't know really. Just be yourself, really. She's I don't think she'd be comfortable being anybody else. I suppose most people are like that. But I remember they came out here once or twice, and we went out to Rangitoto, and we were going to try and get up to the top, and she was coming along quite slowly, and I thought, oh, gee. I went back and said, can you do anything? She said, we go a bit faster? She said, no, this is my pace.
Right. Okay.
And that was it. She couldn't go any faster.
Right.
So, but anyway, so that's how she is.
But if you could talk to her now and say something to her, what would you want to say to her? Briefly.
What would I say? I don't really know. She lives her life, I live mine, really, and we don't see a lot of them anymore.
Yeah.
But I don't think I'd try and give her too much advice. She knows her own life best.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so I want to get on to yours and Mum's relationship. Did you date anyone before Mum?
Not seriously, no.
No? How did you guys...
I was trying to think. I never really had any sort of permanent girlfriends or anything, no.
So how did you guys meet?
We met just before a wedding. I mentioned Tom Robbins, the expert chef that asked me how well I cooked when we went to the flat, and he was one of the members, the flat members, him and Chris Robertson and me. And at the time, Tom was engaged to Sue Secker, and she was down in Christchurch, and he was in Wellington, and they spent a lot of time on the phone together. And anyway, I got here in January. You got married in May, I think, didn't you? Yeah. And I was invited to the wedding, which was very nice. And on the night before the wedding, Sue, who was married to Tom, didn't want to just stick around doing her fingernails and stuff. She'd arranged to go to the concert, the orchestra in Wellington.
Okay.
I can't remember what it was now. No matter anyway. We went there, and there was quite a bunch of people there. There was Sue and Mum's friends.
Yes.
And Tom's. And so we had a bit of a party. We went to this concert, and afterwards we all went up to what's the place called in Dixon Street? Dixon Street Deli, was it? I think it might have been there. Anyway, for a cup of coffee and this and that. And
that's where you spied Mum?
Well, sometime during this social occasion. And Mum will tell you when I was never a great conversationalist.
You were a shy boy?
Yeah, you could say that. And on the way up from the town hall to the Dixon Street Deli, she was asking me questions. I was saying yes and no and no and yes. And Mum was thinking, what have we got here? Yeah. And anyway, so we had this bit of a get together at the deli, getting coffee and whatnot. That was cool. And
then what happened the next day?
Well, that was a wedding, and
no, with you and Mum though. Did you think, oh, I quite liked her?
Oh yeah. Of course I did.
And
yeah.
then what happened? Like,
But during that evening, we didn't get to talk to each other that much.
right.
And then we went. Then there was a wedding, and of course she was one of the chief bridesmaids, so I couldn't get to talk to her beforehand, obviously. But when she came round with the cake later, that was different. She stopped and talked, and that was very cool. And so we had a bit of a chat then, and then her father, Bob, came up and asked her if she was all right or did she want to ride home.
Yeah.
And I think she said, "Oh, I'll be all right."
Ah, okay.
And I did have a car by then,
Oh.
or if you can call it a car. It was a 19-something 51 Vauxhall or something.
Was it your first car?
It was the first one I'd bought. Yeah, it worked, but it had, it had a steering you could do this to, and nothing happened. It
Oh, okay.
play to the max.
Yeah.
But it had a good engine when it ran. It was a big 6-cylinder job.
Yeah.
But the radiator leaked, all sorts of things.
Anyway, so did you
Not
take
to worry,
Mum
anyway,
home?
I took Mum home in this thing.
Right.
And they'd all arranged not to. The following day, Sue and Tom were off to Australia, so we had to see them off at the airport. And I thought, it'd be nice to go there and go and see them off, and I'd see this lovely lady at the same time.
Yes.
So that was cool. And so I was playing golf with Duncan Waugh, my director, that morning, and about the 10th hole, I said, "Look, I've got to go."
Oh, okay. Good.
So I went off to the airport and saw these guys off. And then after we'd seen Sue and Tom off, then there was the next thing. Well, we'd all got clothes which we had to hire for the wedding.
Of course.
That sort of stuff. Well, I've got to get our money's worth of these. And next thing you know, we'd booked into the Pines for an evening.
Island Bay.
The one on the coast.
Yes.
there. Yeah.
Yes.
The restaurant there. So we went there.
Okay.
And that's sort of how it all started, I suppose. I think I was a bit dopey. It was a sort of dine and dance job. I don't think I did much dancing. I was feeling pretty sleepy.
So that's when you started dating, from that night on?
Not really. How did it all really start? Ski club ball.
Ah, ski club ball. Good.
Yeah, that was the University of the Wellington University Ski Club ball. There were 2 or 3 guys at the Fisheries Lab who belonged to the ski club. There was David Elder and Chris Thomas. I remember. I can't remember. Not sure they were about the only 2 who were members. But I remember Len Tong coming along to this party, and one or 2 others I can't remember who. Anyway, we had this party at what's it called? The Seashore Cabaret, the one on Petone Coast, the foreshore there.
Yeah.
That was I guess where we started saying, right, this is good. And,
Cute. Nice. So, what kind of?
Oh, how I invited her to the ski club. I was thinking, who the heck can I ask? Robbie was lovely.
Yes.
And so I phoned her up at Palmerston North, where she was teaching at the time.
Right. Okay.
And no answer. And so I tried again a little bit later. Still no answer. And or did Beryl answer the phone? I think she might have done. Anyway, about the third time I rang up, and she still wasn't available. I said, "Oh well, just leave my number. She can ring me back." And which she did eventually, and we arranged to go to the ski club ball together, which was cool.
Lovely. So you obviously, went out and did lots of dining and dancing, together with friends, did the normal kind of coupley things.
Well, it was not as easy as all that, because Mum was teaching up at Palmerston North,
right?
And I was down in Wellington.
Okay.
But the road between Palmy and Wellington got fairly well travelled over the next
sure.
few months, one way or another. Yeah.
And so when did you decide that she was the one and that you wanted to propose?
Oh, quite quickly. I can't remember exactly how quickly. We must have been somewhere. We were in this little Mini that Mum had bought with help from her dad, who lent us some of the money to do it. Anyway, we were in there. I forget where we were or where we were coming back from or something. And I asked her then, and she laughed.
Oh.
But I kept asking. Eventually, we got there.
Oh, good. Okay.
Got engaged we met in May. I think we were engaged in August. Was it in August? Yeah, and then married in December.
Right.
It's kind of quick. Mm.
But how long had you been going out for before that?
Before when?
Oh, sorry, that was the
That
whole
was
time.
it.
Bom,
That
bom,
was
bom.
it.
Rightio. Okay. All right. So, where did you get married?
At the St Hilda's Church in Island Bay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And where did you honeymoon?
Oh, around the country a bit. We did a lot of driving. Well, for a start, we went to Napier after the wedding. Stopped in Dannevirke or something for a bit something to eat. And we got to Napier. I think it was pretty much dark by then. So we had a few days in Napier, and then we went further on up the east coast and round there, stopping at Lake Waikaremoana to have a look.
Yep.
And we thought, oh, this is a cool place. We'll come back here for Christmas.
Right, lovely.
But we left with that the first time. Waikaremoana was brilliant and fine and everything. But then we found later on it has about 200 inches of rain a year up there.
Oh, okay.
And we got some of that when we went back at Christmas time.
Right.
But it was
So how long were you away for on your honeymoon?
about 3 weeks, I think.
Right, nice.
Well, we were also going to somebody else's wedding in Auckland. That was Mavis' second wedding. Well, this is not my story really.
No, don't tell your mum's story.
And anyway, then after about 3 weeks, we came down from Auckland down to Wellington. I think we did all that pretty much in one hop.
Okay.
In this nice little Mini that we had.
Lovely. So when you think about, let's just go to your kids. What did you do for fun before you had kids?
Well, I played
And
cricket.
when did you decide that you wanted children?
Oh, fairly quickly, I think we realised we wanted children. But before...
What did you do for fun before you had kids?
Together. We liked travelling around.
Yes.
We didn't go overseas. We did see quite a bit of the country here and there. What else did we do? I guess we were sort of looking for houses at the same time.
Right.
And seeing what we could afford and what we would like and things like that.
Yeah.
Settling down, really.
Right. And you settled in. Where did you settle first?
Our first abode, if you like, was in Miramar. It was a little flat attached to a house, which it wasn't that well. It was okay. It's just a little, basically a one bedroom, a one lounge area about the half the size of this one, and a bedroom and a little kitchen. It was pretty tiny.
Okay, and the next place
we lived there for a few months, and then we moved to. Oh, I suppose the one in Mornington was the next one, up there, Farnham Street. And we hunted around for that. That cost us $9,800.
And what year was that?
1968, probably.
Right.
No, not as soon as. Yeah, it would be, wouldn't it? Yeah, about then.
Okay, cool. And then after that, you moved on to.
Well, we stayed there for about 4 years, and then we had our overseas trip with you as a baby, because Mum hadn't met my parents yet.
Right.
So we went over to the UK for 18 months, and I had a sort of short-term lectureship at Salford University.
Right.
In doing marine biology and other aspects of zoology too. Didn't like it much. We weren't very happy there.
Okay.
It's Manchester's a big sort of conurbation. Salford's only one part of it. But no, I didn't enjoy it that much.
Right.
But it was a way of getting there, and we had some nice holidays while we were there.
Yes. So talking about your holidays, what are some special holidays that you have done together, just briefly? Obviously you've been to loads of countries and stuff, but what are some of your favourite memories of the countries that you've been to?
Well, the first holidays we had a couple of weeks in Austria while we were in the UK. It was supposed to be a skiing holiday, but they told us when we got there it's the worst year for snow for 40 years. There just isn't any. So the skiing was a bit curtailed, but they did arrange for the ski school people to be taken across to Italy and ski there. They had plenty of snow in Italy over the Brenner Pass. The Brenner? Yeah, Brenner Pass.
Okay.
And then we had about 3 weeks in France camping with you. and we had a wee tent, and we went down from Dieppe to wherever it is in Normandy, in the sort of northwest of France, really.
Okay.
Oh,
Cool.
that's cool. We enjoyed that one.
Okay, lovely. So, getting to your children. Yeah, so what are your children's names?
There is Rachel Ann, there is Francis Brett, there is David Adrian, and there's Sarah Jane Colman.
Okay, and their birth dates and birthplaces.
Oh, come on.
Okay, don't worry about it. How did you choose our names?
Well, the names we liked.
Yeah.
I don't know where they came from, really. Rachel, yeah, we liked that name. It seemed to be a very popular name at that time. I know at one time you had about 6 other Rachels in your school.
Yeah,
school
5
club.
in one class.
5 others, was it?
I think.
It was a very popular name.
Yeah.
So maybe we just got caught up in that, I don't know. And we liked from Anne of Green Gables, I suppose. I don't know. Is that right? Possibly. Anyway.
Anyway,
Who was
that's
next?
all.
Brett. I don't know how we got... Oh, Brett, because he was conceived in Brittany.
But his full name is Francis Brett.
Yeah, Francis, because he thought he might be fond of animals or something.
Oh.
And then David after me, after the Adrian bit after me, David after, because we like the name David. And who else is there? Sarah Jane. Oh, that just seemed to be, I don't know how.
And Jane was after Mum.
Yeah.
Mum's middle name. Okay, so are there any funny or memorable stories of your children growing up?
Well, yes, I can think of David particularly.
Yeah.
He's quite a bright little boy, and he was very interested in doing stuff. He liked cutting things.
Yes.
And we had this rug an Isle of Man tartan rug with those little tassel things on the end. He got hold of a pair of scissors and doop, 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 doop.
Yeah. I remember that.
I think we've still got that one. It's with its cut tassels and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite cool. But everybody does. Oh, kids, any kid you can think of, they've all done something, haven't they? I'm trying to try and think about what they might have done.
So, what 3 words represented your approach to parenting, and why? Do you think you were strict, lenient? What kind of style would you say you were as a
Well, I would
parent?
hope it was sort of middle of the road, really. I don't think we were particularly strict. I think we like to give you a fair bit of latitude. Well, I don't know. At the same time, I think we did try to get some standards going.
Yeah.
But I would say fairly easygoing. Yeah, you need room to develop. That was the sort of the theme, really. I think anyway.
Were you ever scared to be a parent?
Scared.
Yeah. Was there anything that scared you as a parent about raising children?
Didn't even really think about it too much to start with, I
Too
suppose.
busy.
I mean, yeah, well,
Yeah.
but, no, I don't remember being scared. Yeah, it is a big responsibility, of course.
Is there anything that would change in the way that you raised us?
Oh, probably. I don't know what. Might have to think about that.
Yeah.
But nobody does a perfect job.
No, of course not.
So I'm sure there's some things we could have done better.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to... Ooh, so many cool questions. Do you have any advice or messages for your children and your family?
Oh, the only sort of advice that I would give is...
Or just messages even.
Yeah. Do what you believe to be right, I think. There's a nasty little thing called conscience which will rears its ugly head now and again. I don't think you should ever be persuaded to do something against your conscience.
Right.
So if someone tells you to do something you know, don't want to do that, don't do it.
Okay, cool. So what would be the 3 of the best decisions you ever made?
Oh, coming here was a good one.
Okay.
Getting married was another one. Having a family was another one. Yeah, those
are 3 awesome.
Those are the 3 best ones.
Okay, good. All right. And what are you most proud of in life so far?
Oh, family, obviously.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, I think I did all right as a working zoologist too.
Yep.
Not top of the trees, but okay.
Did the best you could and did a good job with it. Yeah.
Well, I I felt I got into sort of more management positions a bit too soon, and instead of being a sort of bench scientist, whatever you like to call it, I was more of a management person for quite a while.
Yeah.
I mean, going to a lot of boring meetings and things, and having to wear suits when you went to head office and whatnot.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So, what are some values that you hold? Like, what are some events that mostly shaped your life?
Shaped.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Well,
How far back do we go?
Maybe let's just talk about some values that you hold,
Values.
that you stick by.
Well, as you try to be honest with yourself and with others, I guess. You can't always do it. Sometimes you sort of gloss over things or forget bits of the truth and things. You know, it's easy to do. You can do that, especially if you think it's going to upset somebody and things. But I think you really need to, be careful about all that. You need to do what you believe.
So, you believe in God. So, how did you come to believe in God?
I don't know really.
Or have a faith in something?
Well, I think my mother did. But we were never churchgoers particularly. Christmas and Easter sometimes, but we didn't really do a lot of that. But yeah, I can't think of a time really when I didn't have some sort of belief in God.
Right. So,
even if it didn't, as I say, we weren't churchgoers or anything.
Yeah. So, how's your view on God and religion or whatever changed over time? Or your faith has changed?
Well,
How's
no
it
doubt
changed?
it has changed. I mean, you kind of think of what it is now, really, I suppose. But yeah. Well, some people have difficulty reconciling science and religion. I don't think I have that, because as a scientist, you're always asking questions, and sometimes you get answers, but those answers provoke more questions, and I think that's how it is. You're always going there, but you never get to the end.
Right. There's always questions to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And only God knows the answers to those.
Right. Has He given you some answers?
Oh, on the way, yeah, lots, but there's still plenty more.
Absolutely, and there's loads more questions to ask too. Yeah.
Yeah, there's always more. I know some scientists don't agree with that. I know Stephen Hawking was an atheist,
Right.
for example. I'm not quite sure what Darwin was. I think he.
So what made you not be an atheist but believe?
Because however much you know there's an awful lot you don't know, and nobody else knows it either. So who does?
Right.
You know what I mean? You've got to. There's somewhere, sometime, there's somebody, something, whatever that has.
Yeah.
You can't explain.
Okay. So do you do anything sort of each day to sort of affirm your belief or practice your faith type thing?
Not consciously, really. No. It's just there.
Right. Okay. So, just maybe a few more. Are you all right?
Yeah, go on.
All right. Is there something that you still want to do? You're obviously retired now. You're living in Tairua, in the Coromandel Peninsula in New Zealand, and enjoying your garden and your retirement. Is there anything that you would like to do that you haven't done yet?
I'm not too fussed about that. Obviously, there's other places I'd like to go and people to see and stuff. But no, nothing burning.
So no regrets for you? Anything you regret, or you're all good with that?
Well, I can think back on some situations which I could have handled better, but
that's life. That's everybody, isn't it? Yeah.
Move on.
Yeah. So, what do you think the world in 2020? Now we're 2023. What do you think the world needs more of right now?
Needs more of, gosh.
Yeah, or it could help the world.
A bit of peace without war would be good right now.
Yeah.
What can the world do with that? Yeah, a bit more sort of international understanding would be helpful.
Peace and love, and yeah. What are you the most thankful for?
Oh, family mostly. I'm thankful that I came here. Very thankful. Got married to a lovely person. Got wonderful children and grandchildren, and yeah, there's all that to be thankful for. And I think that's above everything else.
Family. Yeah. Cool. And one or two last ones. I'll go. What is your favourite
Oh boy, what?
colour?
Blue.
Blue. I'm just going to give you a thing, and you can just give me a quick fire question. Chocolate.
Dark.
Flower.
Flour.
Yeah, no, not the actual. Yeah. High grade. No. Flower as in garden flower.
Oh, garden flowers.
Yeah.
I used to think roses. Maybe they still are. They're tough, man. You think of roses as being a dainty, delicate thing, but they're as tough as old boots.
Yes. And your favourite food? I know there's so much.
Yeah. Oh well, I've got quite a few of those. Depends.
Okay. What about ethnic food, like as in not New Zealand food?
Oh,
any
yeah.
other?
Oh, quite
what would
a
be
few.
your favourite?
I like Italian. I like Thai. Good curries are nice. There's loads of things really.
Yeah. Good.
Probably mainly. Oh, French. I think they've got some good. Yeah, I guess mostly sort of non-British traditional stuff, which is generally rather dull.
Yes.
But yeah, those sorts of.
So you're happy to eat all kinds of different flavours.
Oh yeah, quite happy.
What's your
to give it
favourite
a go.
ice cream flavour?
Depends what the situation is. Chocolate's good, but I was put off by that a little bit by some guy who was, his name Jim Campbell. He was. Anyway, he used to work in an ice cream factory one time, and he said never eat the chocolate stuff. It's all the sort of odd bits that have been sort of scraped up together and plonked in with a bit of chocolate essence to hide any other flavour.
Oh.
Yes. I
Well,
thought, oh well, okay, he should know.
I think times have changed now, though, with all
I think
that.
so. I think it's probably a bit more strictly confirmed. But anyway, yeah, I do like chocolate ice cream,
All
or
right.
a real fruity one, boysenberry or something like that. That's good.
Okay.
Yeah, all kinds.
All right. What is your favourite animal?
Oh. Again, depends what it is. Dogs are the most friendly animals. I like dogs. Well, I like most animals really.
Okay.
If I had a
dog
pet
came.
animal, I think a dog would be. We've had cats,
Okay.
but we've never had a dog.
And favourite author?
Oh gosh.
Too hard.
Depends what genre we're thinking of too. I think if you go back far enough, I like Jane Austen's books, because she's a writer who explores character.
Yeah.
In all her books, she's exploring the character of the people she writes about. And I think that's.
What are you reading right now?
Nothing much.
Okay. You're enjoying yourself. What's your favourite board game then?
Board game. Well, what do we do at the moment? We play Rummy Cub quite a bit. To call that a board.
Yeah. Sure. Why not?
No, it's not a card game, is it? Well, it's sort of almost.
No, that's all good. That's a board game.
But there's a lot of good board games. Cluedo's good if you've got a bunch of people together. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. What about your favourite holiday? That would be.
Ooh, boy. We've had some fairly good ones actually, come to think about it.
Yeah.
Well, we had a good one in Greece and in Turkey.
What would be your favourite?
Nice one in going to the United States and coming back and to meet you guys in Hawaii. That was a good holiday too. Oh, yeah, we've had some good ones.
Yeah.
And Australia's a nice place to go to as well.
So usually places with heat?
Yeah, but I haven't. I don't know. I've had one or two holidays in colder places like Norway. I had a couple of skiing holidays there in February, March time, which is late winter over there.
Cool.
And that was nice. Although I went there on my own, but there was always a bunch of other guys around.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stayed in the youth hostel.
Fun. Okay, two last questions. Favourite sport?
Cricket.
And favourite season?
Yeah, I do like summer.
Summertime.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
with spring and autumn at the end of it all, but on the whole, winter is less wonderful.
Wow, that's awesome, Dad. Thank you so much for letting us into your life a little bit and knowing a little bit more about you and all the. I'm sure there's so many more things that you could say, but we just really appreciate hearing bits of your life and about you.
Cool.
So it's really good.